What is the polar bear's secret for falling asleep? Hey, it's Coach Vulcan, and tonight I want to share with you a story that I just read about a polar bear and how it fell asleep. The actual name of the story is Soren fella isbjörnen i sömn, which means this is how a polar bear falls asleep. So, this is a Danish story, so I'm gonna translate it. If you want me to, I could also read it in Danish. You don't want me to read it in Danish now, do you? So, going from polar bear to zzz, how does the polar bear do it? Well, let's find out, shall we? And because this is a picture book, actually, I'll show you some pictures, so let's see how we're gonna do this. Let me adjust my seat. So here you can see the Z's. And there we go. Can you see this well? Alright. I cannot sleep, said the polar bear. He opened one of his eyes. There is nothing to do. He is fully awake. Slowly, he gets up from his bed and he goes outside with his blanket. Let me adjust it. There we go. He doesn't go a long way outside before he sees a black spot outside. What is that black spot? Well, it was the nose of the polar fox. And the polar bear told the polar fox, I cannot fall asleep. Oh, how are you asleep? What helps you? And the polar fox told the polar bear that what helps him is that he does have a secret about falling asleep, and his secret was his tail. He put his head under his tail, and that way, because his tail was the softest in the land, he could fall asleep easily. So, the polar bear decided to try that out. And here you can see him trying it out. The polar bear tried out the tail trick, but his tail was way too short. A little bit exhausted after trying this out, after trying all these positions and ways to get his tail around his head, he felt even more tired and more exhausted. But he continued on. Then the polar bear met the red rabbit. And the polar bear asked the red rabbit, how was he sleeping also? And the red rabbit told the bear that he also had a trick of falling asleep, and his trick was his ears. His ears were very, very soft. He would put his head under, he would use them as a pillow, and that is how he fell asleep. But the polar bear said, I cannot sleep on my ears, he said, and he demonstrated it. It just did not work out. So, continuing on, the polar bear went into the chicken coop. He asked the chicken, how did they sleep? Did they have some trick that they used to fall asleep? And yes, they did. They told him that they drank warm milk, and that they told him about warm milk and bedtime pajamas and night lamps and night light. And basically they were telling him about sleep hygiene, different things that he would try out. And the polar bear was listening to these chicken talking about sleep hygiene over and over again about the lights and the pajamas that they were using, and he felt very, very tired, but he did not feel very sleepy. So he continued on. Finally, the polar bear, he saw a fly, one of those blue dragonflies, going around in the sky, and he thought that he could maybe ask the dragonfly about how did he sleep, but then he thought to himself, well, am I gonna ask a dragonfly now? No. He felt ashamed of doing that. His cheeks went red and he decided to go forward instead. And that's when he saw a marmot sleeping. He decided, or let me just check the story. He decided to check upon the marmot and ask him how he was sleeping. But of course, the marmot, he was already sleeping. He's kind of like a sloth. He's one of those creatures who just sleeps all the time, apparently. Don't quote me on that, I'm not an animal expert, but that's what I assume because I've never heard about marmots having particularly good sleep. But because he was asleep, the polar bear could not ask him how he was sleeping. So he had to move on. So who else did he ask about sleep advice? He asked the swordfish, but the swordfish could not speak, unfortunately, because he had a sword instead of a mouth. He asked the hedgehog, but the hedgehog just continued on. He did not want to talk with the polar bear. He asked the penguins, but he did not understand their language at all. So the polar bear tried many different things. He tried a night hat. He tried doing exercises. He tried sleeping on a log before because he had heard that expression about sleep like a log. So he tried all these ways, sleeping on his belly, sleeping on his back, sleeping with his blanket on his back, sleeping with a blanket on his head, sleeping even. Finally, he decided, I'm gonna sleep like a flamingo. He heard that flamingos had a very good sleep, so he thought to himself, why not try that? So he tried to stand on a leg and stand like a flamingo, do the flamingo, and what happened when he did? Well, he did actually start dozing off, but because he was standing on just one leg, what happened? Well, you can see what happened. He fell down, but he did not fall asleep. Because he fell down, he woke up. After asking everybody, finally he asked the mountain. He went to the mountaintop and he asked the mountaintop, mountain, how do I fall asleep? But the mountaintop was silent. And the trees were silent as well. So the polar bear could not go any longer. And finally, he went home, back to his house. I'm just gonna go to bed, he thought to himself. The polar bear he yawned. He thought about how all the other animals were sleeping. He thought about the soft polar fox, the happy chickens, and he thought about the marmot who was sleeping in his bed. And then what happened? Here is the polar bear, by the way, in his bed. And then the polar bear fell asleep. And he went into the land of slumber.